party, and he acknowledged that people will continue to leave the PNC, but he said that the members leaving would give him more breathing room. So clearly, the Congress Place was congested, and the mass exodus from the party that he's witnessed under his leadership is giving him more room to breathe. I think it was a rare acknowledgement of the truth that it's not more breathing room. It would allow him to conduct the divisive politics that he's accustomed to and that he's unwilling to move away from, that is using race as the lens through which he sees everything. So he then persisted with the lie that there is a bloated list, and it would be a recipe for post-election problems. So the veiled threat that is so common in his lexicon and in his speeches, that again he's accustomed to, was repeated in his most recent public appearances, I should say. We have dealt with this issue a million times before. I think he's trying to preach this to the unsuspecting, hardcore loyalists of the PNC who would believe this nonsense. And hopefully they will support him. He then says he's not bothered by, as I said before, he's not bothered by people leaving the party, but the reason they are leaving is, again, PPP bribing them because the PPP has a lot of money. Now, this is taking the fringe view that can come from the warped minds of some of the extremists and bringing it mainstream into the PNC. The view that people will only leave the PNC not because of his inept leadership, not because of their failure in government to fulfill their promises, not because of their lack of any vision or plan for the future, not because they are propagating a failed ideology of race, but because PPP is bribing them, as though former PNC members, and particularly Afro-Guyanese, don't have the capacity to make independent judgment. That is how disparaging a view he has of them. And this is something that is typical of the PNC. We own you regardless of what we've done. And we do. You have to vote for us, but we never take care of your concerns when we're in office. That is their motto. And let's don't harbor any doubt that this is not a French view. This is the view of the PNC. This is the view of the PNC. Now, he had, when you had, if I'm doing an analysis of the people who left, when you have some of your key activists, particularly women activists, who've held leadership position in the party, leave and accuse you as the reason for them leaving and say that the party has no future whatsoever with a failed ideology, it is a huge problem. And he refuses to acknowledge that as a problem, and this is why they will be decimated at the next elections. It's clear as daylight that they can't win the elections alone or combined with Norton as the leader, with Nigel Hughes as the leader, or anyone else that they may want to put as the leader. They will not win the elections. And that is evident to any right-thinking person. If you travel across this country, you will hear that from people in their private conversations, and you would sense it yourself. And one way of assessing this is to look at the limited engagements that people have with them when they have the public meetings, etc. So when a party is so divorced from reality that it would say, for example, Elson Lowe saying that the budgets of 2023, 2024, and 2025 combined did not address poverty. And you come from a party that had been in office for 5 years, in which 35,000 people lost jobs as a result of your policies, and another maybe 35,000 when COVID hit. And this government has put all of those people back to work to a point where we have labor shortages in many sectors. If you look at the construction industry now in Guyana, it's practically in many ways dominated by Venezuelans. If you go to construction sites, because in many areas you can't find local labor. That is coming from a past when in 2020, when the APNU was in office. Now, if more people are working, it means more people are coming out of poverty. We have supported a large number, the 15,000 part-time workers. They were not working on the APNU. Now they are working across the country. The 3,000 Amerindians who are CSOs, they never had a job on the APNU, they have a job now. So if you're talking about poverty, the key way of getting out of poverty is not by giving handouts, by first of all, ensuring that people have a job. And by any standard, any metric, any assessment that is done today in 2025 compared to 2020 when we took office, will find that tens of thousands of Guyanese now are working, more are working, both in the public sector and in the private sector. That's an important factor. And it came about largely because we re-engineered immediately when we got into office the fiscal environment to stimulate investments. And because of this, we saw massive investments coming into the country and in every sector. And that is why you have so many people working today. So today, I don't want to do an extended press conference. I'm tempted to do short press conferences now and then come maybe twice a week so that I can respond to as we get closer to elections from the party side to respond to the numerous lies that are told during the course of the week. So I'm thinking about it seriously because many times the accusations are left hanging for a whole week. And as a party, I think we need to respond to those accusations. But on this matter here, I think it's very clear about the role that the PPP has played and the changes now, and that APNU and the others are basic. I don't want to say a spent force because it would be disparaging political parties, and we never underestimate the people we're contesting against. That is why the People's Progressive Party has been successful. We never underestimate. We work harder. We work every time as though we are behind, even though we know we're going to win the elections. And that's why we work hard to ensure that people understand our vision for the future, what our plans are, how their lives will change under us, and what we intend to do to support them and their families. Every day we do that. We go out on the ground. We don't do it going on the ground, talking to communities is not a feature of the People's Progressive Party that was recently developed. We've held throughout our lives tens of thousands of bottom house meetings in the opposition just to explain our loss in the 2015 elections. I did more than 90 bottom house meetings to say, hold on a minute, we can complain about the loss, or we can accept that we're out of office and now work to rebuild the party bottom up to win the next elections. We can take one of the two positions. And I opted for the latter position. And that's why we started rebuilding and debunking the lies that APNU told. There are many, many lies. And then people saw us as representing their interests, people of every race. Our office was open to people of every class, every race at the leader of the opposition office. We didn't have an office that was, even I didn't have the office at Congress, at Freedom House, because some people had a stigma, particularly who were new to us, about coming to Freedom House. I managed it from the leader of the opposition office, and had thousands of meetings, literally with various interest groups. And people start to see more and more the heart of the PPP. But this is not unique. Chedi Jagan did it, and others. So when I hear, recently I see some of the people going out, I think this is good, but it is not. You have to understand the nature of the People's Progressive Party. And we've been doing this, and we'll continue to do it in elections. I saw the recent spate of ministers going out in what is considered a post-budget explanation of the budget and where we are going and what they can expect for this year and the future. And I saw someone said, oh, they're having elections in July because they see us going out. But this is not election campaigning. You will know when we start campaigning elections. You know that directly. And we will tell you when the elections are going to be held, and we'll start campaigning for those through the launch of our manifesto, and then you would see the engagements we have. So clearly, the PNC and AFC people don't pay too much attention to them. And now, the fact that they're engaged in a discussion whether they will contest the elections together or not. It's just a smokescreen. They will contest the elections together. Trust me. It's not, in spite of all these principles that they talk about. You remember I think it was the Lilienthal or the Commingsburg Accord, something of that nature. I think the Commingsburg Accord. They will come together. And so right now what they're doing, they're dividing the spoils of office that they will never win. So they're saying, you will get this and I will get this, etc. That's what they're more interested in. That is what they were interested in the 5 years. Who got what? Who controlled which ministry? Which minister could had which sector? And that dominated the entire 5 years, and they forgot all about people and their interests. When people come to the People's Progressive Party, if you go on our list, nobody promises you any position in the government thereafter. That's how we work. We have a manifesto with promises we make to people. We commit to the promises in the manifesto, and we determine the nature of the government after the elections. We don't split up spoils and negotiate spoils of office before elections. It is a phenomenally arrogant way of doing business, and it's typical of the APNU AFC mentality. And the exercise that they're engaged in now, these negotiations are just about that, about sharing spoils. So that's why, from the PPP's perspective, we are not very concerned about it. I think the only people who are concerned about it are they themselves, and they're fighting to have leadership. You know, I've seen all sorts of things in my life, political life, but I've never seen a political party in Guyana sell its manifesto, if it has one. So this is a new, and with Nigel Hughes, everything is about money. Exxon, you remember the Exxon, if the national interest conflicts with that of ExxonMobil, I take Exxon's side because they pay me. I'm on their payroll. I will take a case from a mass murderer, a drug dealer, whatever else, if the money is right. So in this very unusual thing, someone said to me that they have a website, and the website says, "Discover Nigel Hughes' vision for a fair, stronger Guyana." But when you click on it, you have to subscribe to them. You have to pay some money before you learn of his vision. This is a new low for Guyana, or maybe a new high for Guyana. But it's a pretty unusual thing. You know, every week we come here, you listen to the president, you listen to ministers, you listen to ordinary PPP people talking about our vision for the future, our plans for healthcare, education, etc. As public figures, you have to do that. I do that here routinely. I even spoke about things we're considering for a new manifesto, the qualitative issues for the next 5 years. I didn't say, oh, they're going to steal these ideas. I'm worried that they will put them out before us, and therefore we would be seen as, you know, following them. I was not worried about that because I'm confident in our ability to not only come up with the ideas, but also to elaborate on them, craft them into practical plans to support a vision. I'm confident about that. They are not so confident. So you have to, first of all, Nigel Lewis talk about a vision for Guyana when he was new, before the shine was rubbed off of him. And he talked about his vision for Guyana. But we were trying to think, where is the vision? And then he told the reporters that, you know what? I don't really have a plan. I want all the political parties to get together and work on this plan. So this is a rare admission of honesty from a political party that had been in existence for over 15 years, the AFC, saying, for 15 years, we don't know what we were pursuing. We don't have a plan for transforming Guyana, although we claim we did in 2015. So that was a rare admission. Then he said that some members would be working on an oil and gas strategy. And he had nothing to do with it as the leader of the party, because he was working for Exxon, but they would work on an independent oil and gas strategy. That has not seen daylight until now. And then from their counterparts, the PNC, they are more comfortable with slogans. People-centered development, you know, import substitution. These were things I learned in school from a different era. You know, like import substitution and collective self-reliance and reliance. You know, those were the feed, clothe, and house the nation program of the old PNC. Norton still resides in that era. So far, they have absolutely no program. They are very good at criticizing the PPP. So you're not doing enough on poverty. We didn't do anything on poverty, but you're not doing enough. By passing all that we've done, like Christopher Jones and the others saying, oh, the 100,000 to the woman is not anything. You know, the people, it's an admission of poverty. Well, the thing is that we're giving 100,000 additionally to women who just had a newborn. We put in this year's budget $10,000 for every adult Guyanese to get a voucher to do basic tests. We had a spectacle program last year. We had a cervical cancer program. We have public servants have gotten $500 million more per year since we got into office. By now, 40,000 Guyanese would have gotten a house lot. By now, 50,000 persons would have benefited from government-paid scholarships. We now made university education free. We've hired 15,000 part-time workers. More jobs are created. I can go down the long list. People got $100,000 cash grant, every Guyanese. I can go down the long list. They don't see, they did zero in housing practically, zero in all these areas, no plan for health care. They increased the UG fees by 35% when they were in office, but they have a lot of criticisms. Nothing, they can't craft a plan. You tell me if you're talking honestly today as an ordinary citizen of this country, which political party or aspirants into politics now has a plan for the oil and gas sector as we do, for monetizing gas, for taking healthcare and education to a different level, for expanding infrastructure, for diversification of the economy, for adaptation to climate change? I can go down the long list. I can tell you what our plans are right here. Now, I can say that. Not a single other party can do that. And we're in election year already. And we're in election year. They don't know. They'll come together. They'll get a couple of people like the Elson Loan, my Paul, will cut and paste some things, and they would present it as manifesto. And they would say, oh, the PP is giving you $10, we'll give you $15. That's their plan. That's not how it works. So anyone, small parties, political aspirants, etc., you can't just go around posting nice images of yourself. You have to have some substance too. So in this case, at least the PNC didn't say you have to pay for their plan. Well, whatever they say, people-centered development. The Nigel Hughes wants you to pay monthly $50 a month and stuff like that, $100 directly impact. And oh, they have, imagine this, it's a class thing. You know, Nigel Hughes and others believe they're sophisticated and upper middle class and they can look down on the rest of Guyanese and stuff like that. So you have a tiered system. So if you pay $10 a month, you can only support grassroots organizing efforts. $20 would help you do something else, right? It would involve you anything. And then, if you pay $100, you can directly impact the critical campaign. So they have a tiered structure. So if you're a low life, you're not on this structure, you're the $10 per month person, right? And then if you can drink wine and discuss Chaucer or Shakespeare in a fake environment, and then of sophistication, then you can be the $500 a month supporter. That is the stupidity of these people. But you have to pay to understand Nigel Hughes' vision for the future of the country. Nobody wants to know about your vision. We know what it is already. We know what it is already. It's to dupe the people of the country. You've made it clear from the first interview that Demerara Waves had with you when he asked you a question. If your interests would conflict with those, national interests were to conflict with those of ExxonMobil, whose side would you be on? You said ExxonMobil. That's the end of the matter. That's the end of the matter. How can we trust you beyond that? And you can't answer several times. You've lied to the media about, remember the apology for the elections? He said, I have to find out what took place in 2020 for us to decide whether we'll make an apology, whether the APNU tried to rig the elections. Today, I gather, was the day when Mingo made the second false declaration. Today. And until now, he can't have this review. He then blamed GCOM that he couldn't complete his review because of something to do with GCOM. But they are in the public domain. In 2025, people say, why go back to 2020? But the same players are here in 2025 dishonestly claiming that they won the 2020 elections. If you can't acknowledge that fact, that you lost the elections and there was an attempt to rig the elections, how could anyone in this country trust you? So I don't believe that people of the country, particularly APNU supporters, are going to fall prey for their lives again. They're not going to fall prey. I think a lot of those who traditionally supported the PPP they're, they already are aware of their lies. And more Guyanese of every race are becoming more aware of what these guys stand for, which is nothing, just for themselves, not for the people of the country. So in the last week, we also had a very important declaration. And it did not receive much publicity. And I guess this is largely because the statement coming out from the International Monetary Fund about its review of Guyana and its economy through the Article 4 consultation was entirely positive. Had this been a negative review, every single day you would have seen elements of it in the media and editorials from the Starbuck News and others speaking of it. They sometimes elevate an obscure report from some part of the world from an organization that nobody knows exists and make it seem as the prevailing condition in the country. So I saw some organization talking about press freedom in Guyana, which, as you know, is healthy and strong. But they ignore the giant in the room, which is the International Monetary Fund statement. Now, the Article 4 consultation, we do not have a program with the IMF. We exited the program since 2006 because we worked our way out of that program from the era when we were bankrupt. We were declared uncreditworthy to borrow in the 80s, late 80s and 90s when the PNC was in government by the International Monetary Fund, uncreditworthy to borrow. When you get such a declaration, that means you can't borrow commercially and you can only go borrow in the context of an IMF-supported program, which entails a lot of conditionalities. So because our economy was bankrupt, declared bankrupt in the 90s by the IMF, the APNU went into a program, a structural adjustment program. They had no national program. You hear sometimes they go back and say, oh, we had the economic recovery program. That was a structural adjustment program dictated by the International Monetary Fund. And when the PPP got into office, we had to work our way out of that program. In the period when we are declared uncreditworthy, I mentioned already about Sir Alistair McIntyre saying we were poorer than Haiti. But the debt fundamentals, the debt servicing, according to Carl Greenidge himself, was 153% of revenue in that period. So you know you're bankrupt in those days. We work our way out of that situation. And I'm pleased to say before 2015, in fact, by 2050, before oil and gas, we had brought our debt to GDP ratio down from 900% of GDP to 40–45% of GDP, lower than any developed country in the world. And we are using a smaller share of revenue by 2050, before oil, of revenue to service debt than any CARICOM country and many countries in the world. That's the track record of the PPP. Apart from the schools and the roads and the power fixing that over that period, the progress, we restored macroeconomic fundamentals. Inflation rate came down. I told you about interest rates coming down from 40%. If you are borrowing to build a house, you had to pay a 40% mortgage rate. Came down, all of it. So I just digressed a bit to tell you a bit about the history of our dealing with the IMF. The Article 4 consultation is done where it's more of a consultative arrangement. So I saw the entire positive thing. So I did not see Mr. Norton mentioned here that he actually met with the IMF team. But clearly, the PNC issued a statement saying that the leader of the opposition met with the IMF team, and he was accompanied by Elson Lone Maipol. And they talk about incompetence and corruption and everything else under the sun. This is their release. I didn't see much of that in the statement from the IMF. No, when you are campaigning. But clearly, if you go, and I would urge Guyanese, because not many people have read the full, they may have read a small news story on the mission concluding statement. But read the whole statement, and you will see the key headlines. Here are the key headlines. Guyana's economic transformation is advancing at a strong pace and broadening in scale. The medium-term economic outlook remains highly favorable with balanced risk. Staff commends the authorities' continued commitment to maintaining macroeconomic stability, ensuring fiscal sustainability, and fostering inclusive growth. Given Guyana's development and investment needs, the fiscal policy stance is appropriate at this stage, and the fiscal deficits should gradually close over the medium term. Monetary policy remains appropriately tight, helping to contain inflation. There is scope to strengthen macroprudential framework to help effectively respond to potential shocks to financial stability. The authorities have advanced in enhancing governance of the NRF and modernizing public sector operations. Staff supports Guyana's continued efforts to strengthen its AML, CFT, and anti-corruption frameworks in line with its international commitments. Continued implementation of reforms will further strengthen fiscal transparency and anti-corruption framework, including in extractive industries. Guyana remains a global pioneer in climate policies, monetizing forest conservation, and the authorities are enhancing the country's energy matrix, strengthening macroeconomic resilience. Staff supports the authorities' efforts to foster inclusive growth, economic diversification, and upgrading of labor skills. These are the headlines. These are the headlines in the IMF concluding statement. Now, if you go through the content of these headlines, you will see how much of what we are doing, when assessed by a technically capable body, not by Elson Lowe, who was a resort assistant at SARA in the last government. He's their economic spokesperson now. Now the IMF sends down a huge team of economists. They spend several days. They go through all the agencies. They meet with people in the labor movement. As they said, the private sector, they met with Norton. I met with them and the Minister of Finance and the technical staff, and they do their own independent assessment which goes to the board. And so, where it concerns framework for managing the economy, they've made it clear that the framework we are pursuing is a sustainable framework. They spoke about support for inclusive growth. They support our policy of giving periodic cash grants. We spoke about that. We spoke about the potential for overheating the economy in my engagements with them. This was a concern of theirs and ours too. And we demonstrated to them how, because of direct interventions, we have been able to temper the cost of living increases. That is why we have inflation rates close to those of the region or even lower than many regional countries, although we have expanded our economy and our capital budget has soared, which are potentially inflationary, but because of our direct interventions, we explained to the IMF, that's why the economy did not overheat so much. We had a long discussion on a lot of these issues, like, you know, I mentioned before, removing the 50% excise tax from fuel to keep transportation rate constant, keeping the electricity rate constant, water rate constant, reforms that lower the cost of internet, mortgage rates came down. All of these things help to keep the cost of living index or the inflation low. So they talk about the transparency surrounding the NRF. If you listen to APNU, they say that that we are raiding the NRF and that somehow there is something like it lacks transparency and that it's not appropriate. We must save all of the money for the future. You heard what the IMF said, the fiscal policy stance of the government is appropriate. And we've explained this at great length. We said that Norway, yesterday I met with Norwegian ambassador, one of the ambassadors, someone I knew for a very long time, from since the days when I went with Dr. Jagan and Desmond Hoyt to Atlanta. He was there at the Carter Center. He went to the conference. So this was going back a long time. And he played a critical role in helping us to get the agreement with Norway, the agreement on the forest. And we're talking about Norway and its investment in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And I said to him here that we will start saving a substantial portion of the fund by 2027, given the formula that we have and given the expected resource flow. And this is only a few years after we started producing oil and gas. In Norway's case, it was 25 years after they started production that they started saving for intergenerational equity, because they utilized the money to develop the country, health, education, infrastructure, so you could have promoted better welfare and stimulated non-oil investments, precisely what we're doing. But we're even accelerating the savings for intergenerational equity. So when you hear talk from these guys, their nonsensical talk, they clearly don't have a nuanced view. There's a nuisance court case filed now about, oh, we are not complying with the law because the law says oil and gas revenue can only fund development priorities and emergency. We've never triggered the emergency provision of the law. But who in the world, in a country, determines what the national development priorities are? It is the executive of the country that's elected by the people. And in our case, the executive, through its budget, develop what the priorities are. And we further got it endorsed by the legislature of the country, and the legislature, which passed the NRF law, also approves the transfer consistent with the law. So you have the executive and the legislature of the country agreeing to what the national priorities are. The judiciary can't tell the executive what its national development priorities are, because every government would have different national priorities for development priorities. For APNU, it was buying fancy vehicles. That was their national development priorities. It was sending their ministers to Ireland for medical care through an insurance arrangement that we paid for. It was the SLED program that Christopher Jones and the others were using for themselves. It's that sort of national development priority. They had a different one than we had. They took away the money from the school kids. That was not their national development priority, the 10,000 grant, but put it on dietary, more food in the government. The children were not their priority. University education was not our priority. They increased the cost. So we have a different priorities from them, but it was their right to do that because they were in government. But it was misguided. But coming back to the key point is that even if one were to say, all right, well, should we not identify what they are generally? If you look at the education and health expenditures in this year's budget, and you add roads and bridges, I made this point before, it's more money that we're spending this year on just education, health, roads and bridges than than revenue from the oil and gas sector in the budget. So we're spending more on those 4 areas than we have received from the oil and gas sector's revenue. But it's a nuisance lawsuit. It's as many things are from the opposition, engage in a lot of nuisance activities. So I would urge Guyanese to read this document because it debunks a lot of the nonsense that we get that passes off as analysis from the opposition. And the PNC, AFC doesn't even talk about these things. They don't even talk about this. So this is very important for us. So last week, I addressed for the first time the issue of the Mohammeds. You would recall that on several occasions, right here at this press conference, I said that we are not going to criticize individuals for their social activities or even their political activities once they don't come after the People's Progressive Party. That was our position throughout it all. That we had a duty to defend the PPP, its track record, its vision, and its commitment to the people of this country. And we will not allow anyone whatsoever, to misrepresent what we are doing. So, Mr. Mohammed, prior to last week's press conference, made a public statement in which he identified several areas that he believed the PPP administration is targeting him in. He said, first of all, in fact, he started off by misrepresenting the sanctions, falsely claiming that the sanctions that were imposed by the United States government on the Mohammed, Mr. Nazar Mohammed and Azruddin Mohammed and companies associated with them, that those sanctions had a bearing only on nationals of the United States of America. He said that the OFAC statement, falsely said that the OFAC statement said only U.S. entities and U.S. citizens or green card holders could face sanctions or law enforcement actions should they engage in business with him. And it's not true that Guyanese will face any form of sanction if they were to interact with his family. I read from the statement that OFAC released last year. And that statement said that persons transiting the United States of America and nationals of other countries too can face sanctions or enforcement actions. It's in the document itself, but he misrepresented that. He started off with that misrepresentation. He then claimed that people close to the People's Progressive Party or the administration had lost their visas. That it's not true that people associated with the Mohammeds had had their visas revoked, visitors' visas. So that in itself showed that the sanctions could be applicable to anyone. Because if you have a visitor's visa and it was revoked, because of interactions with the Mohammeds, then it means that it's applicable to people who are not U.S. citizens, because U.S. citizens do not need a visa to travel to the United States of America. So I said, I made it clear that this is not so. In fact, a number of people, religious leaders, several others, who had engaged with the Mohammeds in a passing way even, but had a record of calls, apparently calls or text messages or anything else with the Mohammeds or seen around them. They were questioned by U.S. law enforcement officials when they entered the United States of America on a visitor's visa, and many had their visas revoked. And I know this to be true, there are individuals, should it come to this, that I can point to, who came back and told us this. So that was the first misrepresentation, blaming the PPP for this matter. The second thing he said in the letter is that, in the statement, is that he was aware of a businessman in Guyana who was smuggling large quantities of gold and maybe purchasing a large quantity of gold from the Venezuelan military, and who was putting the financial system here at risk. Is being done about this individual. So I said, you should make this public, who the individual is. I'm sure that everyone would be happy to know, the media, the police, the US government, everyone would be happy to know who this individual is, particularly if they're breaching sanctions against Venezuela. So make the information public. But I pointed out that here is a sanctioned individual who was accused by the United States government of smuggling over 10,000 kilograms of gold out of Guyana. 10,000 kilograms is 10 tons of gold. Just imagine 10 tons of gold. 10,000 kilograms of gold out of Guyana between 2019 to 2023, and evading at a minimum 50 million US in taxes. The US ambassador had said they have a mountain of evidence to support this. Now, imagine in your long statement, that's the basis for the sanction, and you didn't address that at all, but you know who else is smuggling gold. So I pointed out about the duplicity of this statement and the individual. Thirdly, he said that there would be an attempt to assassinate his son, and tried to point this at the PPP somehow. Now, I made it clear our track record is pristine on that. We don't assassinate political opponents or any individual. I pointed out which party did that. We are not the ones accused of murder. The Mohammeds have been accused of murder. And so I said the best way to deal with this matter is to make the plot known to the media again and to the police. Imagine you have this information a credible threat, why not take it to the police so they can investigate it and make this a public issue? This would be the only right thing to do. So that was the third issue. The fourth issue was he claimed that the PPP was discriminating against him because we took away his cambio licenses apart from other activities in government that he was prohibited from doing. So the mining and then the married issue of ending the cabotage agreement. And all of this, I believe he was doing for public sympathy, saying that the government should not really have taken away his cambio licenses or disengaged from doing business with him. So I had to point out last week about whether we should support the sanctioned individuals or we should support the country of Guyana and its people. And I said that the choice is very clear for the People's Progressive Party. We'll put country and people ahead of these individuals. Because had we not disengaged, by now, most of the people in the country would not have been able to use their credit cards or a debit card. You couldn't make online purchases. The banks would have probably lost their correspondent relationships. You think we can risk people's future out of some perceived sense of loyalty to you and your son? Because somewhere in the past, you claimed you supported all political parties financially, including the People's Progressive Party. So that was last week. I just had to recap. So until now, we have not seen the Mohammeds do any of the stuff that I urged them to do publicly. Will they answer the question, did they smuggle 10,000 kilograms of gold or not, and owe the state $50 million US or $11 billion at a minimum? That's a straightforward question. And is the United States of America lying when they said they have a mountain load of evidence? That's a straightforward question, rather than obfuscate the issue by you know who else is smuggling. Well, if you know, that's fine. But tell us about the sanction itself. Were the sanctions justified or not? And this straddled gold exported on the APNU and on the PP from 2019 to 2023. That is what the letter said. So if that's true, that means you owe the state $11 billion. The second thing I urge Mr. Mohammed to do is to go to the police and also write every organization globally about who wants to assassinate your son. I've not seen anything in the public domain on that. He just made a statement, threw shades at the PPP, and then just, ignored it totally. He didn't address it. I'm expecting, if you know this, go to the police, write the US government, write the United Nations, because that's the thing you should do if you know of a plot to assassinate your son. The third issue is the businessman who is breaching U.S. sanctions. Could you make public his name or give it to the law enforcement authorities, since you know so much about who is smuggling gold? So none of these questions were answered in the past week. None of the questions were answered in the past week. Instead of answering the questions, they went and made a new set of accusations. So the new set of accusations, and Gordon Mosley, news source, seems to be the new mouthpiece of the Mohammeds. They're securing interviews with the Mohammeds. And they didn't ask the tough questions. Did Mosley ask, did you smuggle 10,000 kilograms of gold out the country? As if you have an interview with the Mohammeds, as you claim here, and you represented in this story, you should have asked that question if you're a reporter who is dedicated to finding out the truth, or who wanted to assassinate your son. Should you not speak about this? None of that came out. So a new headline now: Nazar Mohammed claims government engaged in major transactions with family after U.S. sanctions. Didn't give nothing. No answers from last week. A new accusation now. So I will urge Mr. Nazar Mohammed to make public what these transactions were. I will urge him, since he has this information about 3 major business transactions that were done in the last year since he was sanctioned, he should release the information, what this is about. And since we are all for transparency. And well, when he releases them, then I'll talk about that. So don't let me tell you as yet. So I'm hoping he would release them. I'm calling on him, like I did last week, to release what they are, what they are. And then, in another interview that Mosley had, Mosley again, I think they found a new PR group for the family. Nazar Mohammed vows not to pay GRA's malicious $900 million tax demand for vehicles imported 4 years ago. So last week, I think I dealt with this matter. Now, I dealt with this matter just by saying that it was extraordinarily stupid for his son, Azhar Mohammed, to make a post about how much taxes he paid. So Mohammed taxes to GRA for just 3 vehicles. Mohammed's enterprise is categorized among the largest taxpayers in Guyana, and yet in recent weeks, a few Guyanans on creating mischief have raised questions about their tax history. In GRA, there is a specific classification of large taxpayers under which the Mohammeds fall. This is unsolicited. This is his son posting this. He's blaming the PPP for this. But this is, as I said before, the moronic post that they did. In fact, with just 3 vehicles, 2 Land Cruisers and a Lamborghini, the GRA collected $98.6 million in taxes from the Mohammeds. I'm not going to read the others, the rest of the. Now, immediately thereafter, 2 days later, this is what the GRA, not this week, not last week, but 2 days after he made that post, this was a press release from the GRA. And it referred, this is what it said, the GRA is taking note of a recent social media Facebook post with attached GRA receipts. So he did not even make the post alone. The guy put receipts of his payment. Look, I can find you the receipts there. He posted all the receipts to GRA. He is talking about people's tax business. He posted his whole tax business. Wasn't the PPP that released it? Look at the receipts. This was in his post, T. Mohammed. So he said, I paid $98.6 million. Here are the tax receipts. These are all posted. He brought this matter into the public domain. So the GRA then issued the statement which said, the GRA has taken note of a recent social media Facebook post with attached GRA receipts purportedly being circulated by Team Mohammed on the payment of over $98.6 million in taxes to the GRA on 3 vehicles, namely 2 Land Cruisers and a Lamborghini, and further claims to be of contribution of billions of dollars to the nation's economic development through taxes. It's a long release. I don't want to bore you and the people of this country. So please read the release yourself. But it says here, in the above instances, the GRA, having followed these principles, determined that the value of the said imports were grossly understated, and more so in the case of the Lamborghini, thereby allowing for taxes in excess of $300 million in revenue being underpaid and collectible from the importer. Now, this is 2 days after he posted how much taxes he paid. He brought the tax matter into the public domain. He posted all of his receipts that he paid, and then the GRA said, hold on a minute. You've still not, and you would see why the GRA went after him. Because they explain it in the release. They said, you owe us over $300 million in taxes. 2 days later, he's saying, it's recently we decided to go after him. The PPP initiated this issue. He did himself. But the father is so blinkered, would not see that it is his own son that drew this attention to the GRA. Now, on tax matters, you recall Terence Campbell. Terence Campbell went after a number of private businesses in Guyana who are not paying their taxes. He said they're not paying their taxes. Jagdeo not paying taxes. Check his post. I did not know that until it came out in the public domain that under the PPP government, Terence Campbell got $138 million written off in taxes, claiming he was bankrupt, even not remitting VAT that he collected from people, which I think is a criminal act. We didn't know because I don't pursue Terence Campbell's tax records. I don't even know how much a Lamborghini costed until this matter came up. We didn't know what he paid here. I didn't know what he paid to GRA. I saw this GRA itself saw it, and they responded. He brought the matter to the fore. So now that GRA, I see he says he wants to hire a lawyer because it was 4 years ago. And this is the access. Proceedings under the custom laws may be commenced at any time within 7 years after the date of the offense. And what was the offense GRA said? He underdeclared the Lamborghini. And you know what the declaration value of the Lamborghini was? $75,300 US. Lower than the declared value of a Land Cruiser. On their vehicles must pay high taxes. But you